everybody, and welcome into the first video for our new book club. And now that we've started our book club, thank you so much to everybody who's joined so far. And Bruno, special thanks to you, my friend. I truly appreciate your efforts at recruitment. Without you, book club would be very tiny. We would barely have a book club. And thank you so much also for helping me with the Discord. Now we've got a really good organization to it, and I'm really excited about how the threads are going to work. So thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you. Everybody who joined because of Bruno, he's a cool guy. I love him so much, and I'm happy that you're with us. I really hope that you enjoy what we end up talking about, and thank you so much for helping me choose our very first book. And before I go into that, if you're here, then hopefully you know a little bit about how we laid out what's going to be happening with the book club. But if not, then don't worry, I'm about to go over it right now. The way the book club's going to work is we're going to read by milestone. So we just started on Sunday. Today's Tuesday. And we've chosen a book. Thank you also, Thomas, for, while I was on vacation, checking out how the book breaks down and making a really good suggestion for how the milestones are going to work on this one. So basically, a milestone is going to be a grouping of chapters. And once we get finished with that grouping of chapters, once a week, I'll make a video and people are welcome to post on the Discord. I'm going to be making threads for each of the milestones, and there will be a different thread for every book that we end up having for book club. So right now, we're brand new. We only have one book on there. If you go to the Discord and you can't see it, that's because you probably are not a member of the book club yet. Just let me know, let one of the other members know. I'll make sure that they're able to create new book club members. And if you don't want to do that, but you want to keep on coming around every week to lurk, that's totally cool. I lurk all the time. And I know sometimes you just don't want to interact with people, but you're interested in hearing how it breaks down. So we're going to be talking about each of the milestones as we come across them. We're going to talk about what happened during the milestone. We're going to talk about what we think is going to happen next, the characters that we like, if we like the writing, just things that we've been interested in for that milestone. So without any further ado, this book club is going to be all about the 3-body problem, which is going to be coming to Netflix as a show in January 2024 is what I think I heard. So we're going to try to get through this one, and maybe we'll have time to get through at least the second book. So we'll be well into the material, and we can check out, maybe compare to the Netflix show when it comes out, and we can have a discussion about that. Won't that be cool? The first milestone in the 3-body problem that we decided to go by was chapters 1 through 3. And the biggest reason for that is because the book kind of separates out the first 3 chapters. It has parts. Wow, that's really bad. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, God. This is what I get for using processing software. All right, so part 1, Silent Spring. And that is the first 3 chapters. And then the next part is part 2, which they call 3-body. So part 1, Silent Spring, it talks about China in 1967. It's where it starts. It's basically about the Cultural Revolution. It shows a couple different points of view. First, through this very young radical who is coming out at the top of this military compound as a part of the People's Liberation Army. And of course, they were fighting against the Red Union. So They are known as the Red Guards versus the Red Union. So inside the building is the Red Guards. Outside attacking the building is the Red Union. And they're kind of sieging them. And it tells us that every day, a young revolutionary, just like ardent with the fervor of revolution, comes out and waves their flag and kind of shouts slogans through megaphones and hopes that they don't get shot and then come back down. And so far it's been working for them. They've been able to retreat safely back into the compounds. But this new girl going for it gets shot, falls off the building, gets pierced by this gate that's at the bottom, and it's kind of horrific, really. They're using her body for target practice. It talks about all the red flags that are being waved by the Red Union as almost like flames at the bottom of this compound. That's kind of where it starts. Then it goes into how these battles are raging all across Beijing. There was multiple different splinter groups of revolutionaries. So we kind of get brought into this idea of monsters and demons, who are the people known to be enemies of the revolution. And they are brought in front of crowds of people to have these struggle sessions. And they're called that because people are essentially accusing them of things. It's mainly like teachers and luminaries and just smart people who are well known for educating the public. But if they had anything that was counter-revolutionary, that didn't go along with the ideas of the revolution, then they got sat up in front of this crowd with these like tall hats, which just reminds me of like the old school dunce caps, right, that they used to make kids wear at school if you got questions wrong or acted out. And they would whip you with like belts and like with like metal buckles, and some people died that way. But they talk about the struggle sessions coming with kind of three flavors, these three stages of the person struggling. First stage is kind of, they're still really adamant about their ideas. They are not giving in to the revolution. They're still they still feel that they're a respected intellectual, and they still feel strongly about what they believe. In the second stage, they become numb to the struggle and they don't put up a fight. They just try their best to avoid a breakdown. And then third, they start accepting that they have been guilty and they were harming this great cause of the revolution, and they confess, let's call it, that they are guilty. They confess to their crimes. They express a longing to be a part of the revolution, and that's what ends up happening to a lot of them. It also says that these like fervent revolutionaries, even though their goal is to break down these people, they develop this like hunger or like this lust for taking struggle sessions with the first group, the first stage group, who will kind of fight against them because they want to fight against something. They believe in their cause and they want to break down these people. So now we're introduced to, and I'm so sorry for all my Chinese people out there. I am not good at Chinese, and this is a Chinese book. It's written by a Chinese author. It's translated by a Chinese author, and there's a lot of Chinese words in here, especially names, that I will probably mispronounce. Apologies. But we are introduced to a physics professor named Yi Zhitai, and he comes out with a dunce cap that is just made of thick steel bars that are welded together. So that was kind of extra pressure to make him bow his head, because one of the ways that they get people to submit is that they'll stop if they bow their head. And he is just like holding on. He doesn't want to submit. He is calmly exchanging information with these people who are dedicated to breaking down what he built while he was a physics professor. The theory of relativity, they're saying Einstein's theory of relativity is reactionary, which is counter-revolutionary. And they call him a liar in his expertise, telling him that it was wrong, that he wasted people's time, and that he was hurting the cause. And they actually get his wife out there, who is also a teacher, who they previously had broken down. And she's just barely holding on to sanity, but she is a part of this group that is challenging him and trying to break him. It's rough. It's rough, guys. Knowing that somebody you love and trust is now been compromised by somebody tearing apart your country and just having an all-out assault against truth. And he takes it and he calmly answers their questions. He calmly provides really smart rebuttals to their challenges. And eventually they resort to violence, especially these are like high school age kids who are doing this to him, some of which were like his students. One of his students actually was trying to get him to bow his head, and he thought, probably as a sign of mercy, to stop the violence against him. But he believed in what he was doing, and the younger ones, the really fervent ones, start whipping him in the face, in the head with these belt buckles, and he's bleeding. And he starts thinking back to his experience with his wife's father. And his wife's father kind of talked about his own daughter as like, she's too smart for her own good because she worked in fundamental theory, and he thinks that you need to be kind of dumb to work in fundamental theory. But she was smart in some other ways, where she saw the political currents running, so she started changing names of things that she was teaching to be less overtly counter-revolutionary. So instead of Planck's constant, she called it the quantum constant. Instead of Maxwell's equations, she called it electromagnetic equations, and so forth. And so she wanted to get through it without kind of raising too many flags and kind of trying to fly under the radar. But it just got way too bad. She found herself on that side and him on the other side, and it actually... he dies due to them whipping his head. And as he's bleeding out there, she starts, like, her sanity tears. The last remaining threads of it fray, and she just starts kind of laughing maniacally, which is like so disturbing. Some people start walking away after that. They're kind of like weirded out by it. And you find out that his daughter is actually in the crowd, and she was yelling. Well, she's drowned out by everybody else's revolutionary slogans yelling at him, but she's kind of trying to yell to stop. And after everybody starts like leaving and they just like leave his body on the stage, she comes up and sits with him, and it's just really sad. Her name was Yi Wenjie, and once she is introduced and we start seeing her point of view, that's kind of who we stick with for the rest of these 3 chapters. And she talks about going and visiting a professor named Ruan, who was a close confidant to herself and her father, and she was just a very big mentor for her in her life. And she goes and she sees that some things that have been torn down in her home have been kind of like put back together. Like there's a piano that got smashed, and it's not fixed, but it got put back. There's like these art pieces that got torn, and they kind of pieced them back together and hung them up, even though they're still like pretty destroyed. She finally finds her one of her mentors, Ron, and she's committed suicide by sleeping pills. And one of the ironies about it was that Yi Wenjie, when she was younger, was harassed by some revolutionary students who were accusing her of being a capitalist. They smeared makeup on her lips and they put high heels around her neck. And when she finds her professor at her home, she's actually wearing lipstick and high heels. And it would seem to be a form of silent protest. And it had talked a little bit earlier in the book as well about how a good amount of intellectuals actually committed suicide as a form of protest. And it just kind of got lost, it seems like, on the mass population who just really were fervent for revolution. So next we go into 2 years later. She's working in the Greater Qinggong Mountains. She's basically helping them deforest the mountains, so they're cutting down all these trees. And she meets a man who's a journalist, and he sees in her, even though she's very silent, that she feels similarly to him, that this is kind of an atrocity what they're doing. He sees a lot of ecological impacts that are happening. I think her feeling is a little bit more visceral, almost as if she can feel the pain of the trees that they're cutting down. You come in and he's kind of interviewing one of the faster chainsaw guys who's just kind of proud to be a fast chainsaw man, cutting down trees so quick. And he has this moment where he says, "Look at the rings. This talks about how old this tree is. Did you notice like how old the tree is?" And the guy's like, "No, but I cut it down like super fast, man." And the journalist guy, he talks to him about how this tree dated all the way back to one of the old dynasties of China, that it was like 300 years old, the tree. He's like, "You cut this down and you just felt nothing." And the guy's like, "No, like why should I feel anything?" And he kind of shows this contempt for people who he sees as like educational types, and kind of goes on with his business. And so the guy, his name's Bai, he talks with Wenjie about The Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. He actually was given a copy so that he could translate it and help decide whether it was reactionary, aka counter-revolutionary, or if it was like okay, if they didn't need to ban the book. And spoiler alert, they end up banning the book, but he gives it to her to read because he thinks that she'll get something out of it. And he also wants her to read this letter that he's written, trying to get this deforestation to stop and to show that there's going to be severe ecological impacts. One little thing also is that they're working at the bottom of this mountain, and they call the mountain Radar Peak. They call it this because every once in a while this huge antenna comes out at the top, and it seems to be emitting some kind of electromagnetic field, I should say. And weird things happen when this goes down. People who live close to it are losing their hair, I guess. There's a moment where it was snowing and all the water above, all the snow, I should say, turned into water. It fell onto the trees and then it refroze. And it kind of made this like beautiful crystal palace in the trees, which is pretty cool imagery. but they also disturbs birds. Like all these birds and like all these like forest animals like go crazy sometimes when this antenna is out. So there's these really like strange phenomena going on at Radar Peak, and nobody really knows what it's about. It's like this secret government military installation. They have no idea what they're doing up there. Bai Mulin is his first name. He asks Yi Wenjie to read this letter that he's written, and she reads it. She thinks it's very eloquent. She thinks it's beautifully written, and his handwriting is just sloppy as hell. So she decides she's going to help him out by rewriting the whole thing and helping him to send it in. So she does this. He leaves after this. His assignment is over with that. But about 3 weeks later, she gets summoned back to the company headquarters from that logging camp and is basically accused of having written this letter and having endorsed Silent Spring when Silent Spring has now become banned material. And they're asking her if she did it. And she's saying, I copied it, but I didn't write it. Like, these are not my words. I copied it for someone else. As she's trying to tell them that she was framed, they start accusing her of trying to frame him for it. So he goes off and just throws her under the bus, and she is basically taking the fall for this counter-revolutionary piece of literature. So she realizes that she's in kind of a big dilemma that she can't really get herself out of, and she gets put into a prison, essentially, where a military representative from the Intermediate People's Court, which is, she actually has the ability to have a final vote on judicial matters. So she is kind of the judge and jury for Yi Wenjie, and this lady's name is Cheng Liwa, and she's what's known as a cadre, but in their like vernacular, cadre isn't meant to be a group of people. It's talking about a particular person who kind of has extra control or is in like a level of authority. And so she comes in and she gives off this impression of being very nice, and like she was beautiful and popular in her youth, and now she's kind of like just this like friendly woman who is gonna get her out of a problem, and she totally understands where she's at, and you know, these mistakes happen, we're just gonna have you like, why are they treating you badly in here? Where's your stove? It's freezing in here. God, why I can't believe they've treated you bad. We're gonna get this all fixed up. And she wants her to sign these papers, and she's like, yeah, just sign them. They don't really have anything to do with your sentencing for the other thing, but if you sign them, we're gonna get you out of the whole thing. And I mean, she's looking at like 10 years for writing this piece of literature. Yi Wenjie is just like, well, what do these things say? And they're like, oh, well, like it's written by your sister, and it's talking about these conversations that your father had with different people, and it's basically incriminating her father and kind of laying out this legacy of having been very undermining in this system and just being an enemy of the system for like years. And he's been just a bad person, I guess you could say. And she's reading through it and she realizes like this isn't her sister's writing. Her sister writes where like every sentence is like a bomb being dropped. Her sister was apparently kind of selling out the family for years. She believed in the revolution. She had this ardor for a revolution. And at this point, you actually start to realize that her sister was that same girl who they talked about at the very beginning, who was shot for waving this flag and fell off onto the gates. And she's talking like, oh yeah, like there's these rumors that she might have been killed at her post, but she didn't really have a great relationship with her sister. She knows her sister well enough to understand that this calm, tactful, well written evidence of conversations she had no idea about and probably never happened was not written by her sister. And she says, yeah, just sign it. It's signed by your sister, some other witnesses that show that these conversations happened. And she's like, I'm not going to sign it. I have no knowledge of these conversations. As far as I know, they never happened. And that's when, things kind of get rough. And the lady, the cadre, she shows her true colors and is basically like, you're a child, like an educated young person like yourself, you're going to ruin your whole life and you're an idiot if you do that, And she picks up this bucket for washing and it's filled with water, and she just pours it over her and she pours it over the blanket that she has to keep her warm in her cell. And they still have never turned on this stove. And she basically says like, I'm not gonna use the exact wording she used, but she basically calls her stubborn and some names, leaves her there to die, really. So because she wouldn't cooperate, now instead of just being like prosecuted for it, these people are vindictive enough to just like leave them there to die, to just freeze to death. And she passes out, and fully believes that she's gonna die there. And there's this little like aside that starts giving you this idea that Yi Wenjie is an important person in history, and that this whole thing happening with Bai Mulin throwing her under the bus, that it was a turning point in history, and that Bai Mulin never actually went on to do anything after that. He just kind of did his best to stay under the radar. They don't think that he initially planned on throwing her under the bus, but once he understood the reception of the letter that he turned in, he understood that he was going to be taking enough heat for it to be a criminal, that he could die for it. And that's when he kind of just like wimped out and threw her under the bus. So not cool, Bai Mulin. Should stand up for what you believe in. And you ruined this girl who, you saw something in. You knew that she was special, and you knew that she was going to die for your crime. So what an a-hole. And then we come back to Yi Wenjie. She wakes up in this helicopter with somebody who was a student of her father's, and kind of her father was a mentor to him. He kept in contact while he was trying to get his degree, wanted to get into applied physics rather than theoretical physics, and her father kind of challenged him on that and was like, hey, you're bright enough to be in theoretical physics, like why do you want to just go to applied physics? And the guy basically admits to the father that it's too easy to be viewed to make counter-revolutionary mistakes as a theoretical physicist, that you can accidentally go against the party line by making these new discoveries, and that he didn't want to get caught in this situation. And now he's kind of a part of this like military group doing this physics work, and he seems to be recruiting her for something. And she's trying to like put these pieces together as she's coming to, and they find themselves at Radar Peak. And he is basically told by this other guy that's with him, and his name is the guy who is the student. His name is Yang Weining, or Yang Weining. Maybe got that right. Yang Weining. He has recruited her, and at first is trying to act like he doesn't really know her, and it seems like he might be kind of acting for the benefit of the guy who's with them, who seems to be like kind of a hard military party line guy. He's called Commissioner Lei, but Yang Weining seems to be a chief engineer at this project, and the project is at radar peak, and he needs somebody with Yi Wenjie's talents to help them. But he also tells her, like, you have a choice. If you don't take this job, you will serve time, but you'll be your case, even though you're sentenced to 10 years, you'll probably get out in like 7, maybe 8, and you can get on with your life. But if you come in to this installation right now, you might not ever leave. That's the kind of work that we're doing here. It's secret, and people aren't allowed to know about it. People aren't allowed to talk about it. Once you come in here, you might not ever come back out. And what's kind of sad is that what she immediately thinks is nobody can take her out of there. Like, you're saying that I'm allowed to stay here for the rest of my life is kind of her thought. Like, I finally be in safety. Mostly she's just like, nobody can get me here. Like, I'm in a place where I'm safe finally. And God, that is so depressing. That's so sad. But while they're there, he basically is like, you need to think this decision through. And she's just like, I can stay here for the rest of my life. I'm coming in. He's like, this girl, like, okay, I guess so. But once they go in, then he says, like, hey, like, you need to stay out here for a minute. We're about to do something. And they actually are doing some kind of transmission, is what it sounds like. And they have a target classification. They have a serial number for the target. And they do this countdown. They talk about these different units, energy unit, a coding unit, and they all have to report systems go, amplifier unit, interference monitoring unit. And as they count this down, it says begin transmission, all units continue to monitor. And she felt this light itch on her face, similar to when she was down below, and she knows this enormous electric field has appeared. And she looks out at the sky and she sees all these birds coming up, and then as they hit this electric field, they just like fall out of the sky. And while she's there, this malfunction with an energy unit happens. Number 3 gets burnt out, and a backup unit is in operation. They get it done. They say transmission complete, and that ends a cold winter night of 1969. And that ends part 1. So we're getting into part 2. I don't know where it starts at. I don't know what the time jump is like. All we know from the 3-body problem is that it somehow has to do with messaging aliens, and that the aliens eventually come to invade Earth, and that creates these kind of 2 camps, where one wants to welcome the aliens because they see their system is corrupt and they think the aliens like are going to be better, allegedly. And then this other one that's preparing for the invasion, preparing to fight off the aliens. And I have no idea which part she's going to be in, but I think what we just witnessed is the message going out to the extraterrestrials, and it's happening at radar peak. So she's going to be a part of the team that makes contact with aliens. She's an important figure in history, and we get to find out just how important she is and what her role in all of this is and how the aliens come in. So it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to reading chapters 3 through 6, which I'll release a video on next week. If you've read chapters 1 through 3, we have a thread available. Come join the book club and come talk about it with us. We're going to be talking about it in the Discord, in the threads. We have it all organized. So, yeah. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you get the 3-body problem and read along with us. If not, continue to lurk, my friends. You are welcome here. Join the Discord. Check out my Mercari listings if you want to buy some books from me. I don't have the 3-Body Problem for sale because I can't find any used copies of it. So buy it new. It's not too bad on Amazon. So far so good. I really like Cixin Liu's writing, at least as the way that it's translated by Ken Liu, who wrote this other fantasy series that maybe we'll get to at some point. But man, pretty intense stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, take care.